Welcome back to the Pro Football Hall of Fame for another episode of our Before the Snap series. We are so excited that you're here with us today. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for coming back to participate in another one of these programs. If this is your first time, thank you for choosing to watch this program with us and join in. We hope that whether you're a student in high school, in college, a young professional, a seasoned veteran, it doesn't matter. We really believe there's something for you to gain from this program, and we hope that you'll see that here by the end of our program. My name is Nathan Martin, and if you're a return viewer, you've seen me on here a couple of times before. Real talk, complete honesty with you guys. Jacob Ray, who typically hosts this program, he's working. He's in a meeting. He couldn't get out of the meeting, so I'm lucky enough to host this interview with our special guest, who is Ashton Mullinix from the Detroit Lions, and we'll talk a little bit about what his career is here in a minute. But just a couple of thank yous and reminders before we get rolling. First, thank you, Ashton, for taking some time out of your day, your Friday afternoon, to join us and answer these questions, have this conversation with our viewers. We really appreciate you doing that for us, and we appreciate what you do for the game of football up there in Detroit with the Lions. Thank you to our viewers. Without you guys, the program wouldn't be what it could be. You guys really drive the conversation with your questions. So I would tell you, please comment, like, share this, put what school you're attending. We want to hear from you guys. Ashton wants to answer your questions, not my questions. So please participate with us. And then, a reminder to you guys here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, everything that we do is mission driven. Our mission here at the Hall is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. And I believe that we fulfill that mission in hosting this program. We're celebrating the excellence that is Ashton and his career up there in Detroit. We're promoting the values that the game teaches. So hopefully you guys will see that throughout. And like I said, the last reminder, I already said it, but I want to emphasize it because it makes the program so much more fun. Please comment. Let us know where you're watching it from. Send in your questions. We want to hear from you guys. And without any further ado, I want to get to our guest because he's the star of the show. So please welcome Ashton Mullinix, and I'm going to read his bio. We're lucky and grateful to be joined by Ashton Mullinix. Ashton is a sport business professional and has been the executive director of business strategy and analytics for the Detroit Lions since November 2018. For the past 8 years, he's served in several different capacities within the NFL at the league and team level. He started his career working for the NFL at the league's headquarters in New York City, where he gained experience in various departments, including corporate development, consumer products, and club business development. Ashton transitioned to the Detroit Lions to launch the organization's first business strategy and analytics team. In the last 4 years, his team has implemented new data-driven processes to better predict business outcomes and improve decision-making. In this role, Ashton is involved in many high-profile projects within the organization, focused on maximizing revenue, automating processes, and personalizing the fan experience. Outside of work, Ashton recently completed an MBA from the University of Michigan and is a member of the board of directors for the University of Michigan School of Kinesiology. With that, I'm honored to welcome our special guest, Ashton Mullinix. Ashton, thank you for connecting to the Before the Snap program today.
Thank you, Nathan. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Really appreciate having, the audience here, and, happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And, with that, happy to get into the questions.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we're so thankful, like I said earlier, to have you here with us. And hopefully this first question is a softball question for you. It should be pretty easy. I'm sure you've been asked this question before. I'm sitting here myself, you hear about analytics on the football side so much. It's growing so quickly on the football side. I'm like, this dude is smart. He's working in analytics. He's got to be smart. But what does the executive director of business strategy and analytics do with the Lions?
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. So, my role, and we'll probably get into it throughout the course of this hour, but has grown quite a bit since I joined the Lions, and it's changing pretty much every day. But at a high level, as you allude to in my bio, we're trying to help maximize revenue, automate processes, improve the fan experience, and really, make sure that we're making better decisions. So my my group here at the Detroit Lions cuts across all the business departments, and we help them with whatever project they might have. So we really focus on ticketing, partnerships, and premium or suite sales. But there's other departments as well as operations, marketing, community relations that we help with. So there's about 14 different departments that we touch, and every day the projects are different. Every time of the year, projects are different. So really, like I said, is we're just trying to help people use data to make better decisions so that they can improve kind of their department, and it improves our organization as well.
Yeah, and I mean that makes sense. All departments, every organization wants to make the best decisions, for each and every aspect of that, so that they can be as successful as possible. And the Lions are no different. They're a football team, but they're also a business. They're trying to make a great experience for the fans. Make money. It's part of being a business. And all that goes into that. So I'm sure we'll get into more detail with some of that. But I got to ask you. You told us what you do, but why do you do what you do? Why do you love your job or really enjoy your job? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, I think, and probably everyone listening to this call is probably going to relate that they're a sports fan. So as a kid growing up, sports were a big part of my life. I didn't have the athletic ability necessarily to go pro. I kind of knew that as I got to high school, college, but I was looking for another way to kind of have that passion a part of my life every day. And I think combining that with the business side, I saw a lot of opportunity. It matched up with a lot of my long-term career goals of what I wanted to do. And, for me, I think it's fallen into a perfect place here at the Detroit Lions. That's why I've been here for the last 8 years, is being able to make a difference in the sports world is something that means a lot to me. And it's something I see that there's a lot of growth still to happen. You talked about analytics and, how that's driving businesses forward. I think that, my department and my role is going to continue to grow over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think for me, that's what motivates me, is continue to be able to, make an impact every day when I go to work and do it in something I love in the sports industry. So for me, the combination of kind of those two sides really kind of motivates me and gets me going every day, and kind of contributes to kind of where I'm at in my career right now.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. It's kind of cliche, figure out what your why is, know what your why is. But I think for all of us, whether you're a high school student, you're a college student, you've been in the business, the industry, for decades, we got to have a deeper purpose and meaning to what we do besides just going to collect a paycheck. Whether it's I'm passionate about sports, I enjoy sports, the problem solving, whatever it may be, we've got to have that. And I think you kind of touched on that and some of the reasons why you enjoy what you do. So earlier you said that, part of your role is to help, maximize revenue, automate processes, and create that personalized experience for the fans. And those are all great. And it looks beautiful on a bio. Like I said, when I read this, I was like, this guy's smart. But what's the typical day like? You're doing those types of things. What's the typical day? And maybe even touch a little bit what it was like, and then now with the COVID-19 pandemic, how it's shifted and changed maybe a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as I mentioned, my role's evolved since I've been here. So I started off within the ticketing department, and now, as I mentioned, I cut across 14 different departments now. So I think for me, my typical day kind of before COVID and kind of where we're at today was I'm involved in a lot of different projects. I think that's one of the things that keeps me interested in my job and kind of in my role is, I can be meeting on, ticket pricing in the morning. And then, after that, I'm moving to a marketing meeting. Then I'm talking with HR about staffing and budgets, and then working on a partnership deck later that night. So for me, most of my days consist of a variety of different roles. I oversee the analytics team, but I also oversee our group sales team, our premium services team, and our membership services team as well. So just the 4 departments that are underneath me are all very different departments. And that means that I'm in a lot of different meetings, a lot of different conversations that it's difficult to juggle at times. So something that keeps the job interesting to me is moving from, one conversation to the next. Now, as you alluded to, it's a little different now that we're all at home and we're still working remotely. So I think the biggest difference for me now is trying to maintain those communications. Like it's very easy when you're in the office, walking around, talking to people, jumping from conference room to conference room. Now, lots of Zoom calls, lots of Teams meetings, but making sure that I'm communicating with, most of the business organization is a lot more challenging sitting at home, So that's one of the biggest things that's kind of changed is making sure that communication, you're not just running into people in the hallways. You have to be proactive and reach out and have those conversations to make sure you're still getting everything done, especially for a department like ours that touches so many areas. Communication's been even more important now that kind of our whole world has changed.
Yeah, that's so important. And really all aspects of life, communication is so key, but in the professional world, you've got to be able to have that uh consistent, steady, like, hey, this is the expectation, this is what I need you to do. What ideas do you have? And like you said, you miss some of that when you're working from home, where you might have seen somebody in the office, you're walking by, like bouncing ideas off each other. I know that, here at the Hall of Fame, we experienced some of that while we were working from home, but luckily we're able, the majority of us, to come into the office now. But that's really interesting to hear you say that. And I want to make the point, I see some comments coming in on Facebook. Go ahead and drop your question. I look over here because this is where my computer is at watching this, but drop your questions in the comment section. I saw some of you guys were asking. We've got students from all over really the country. So it's really exciting to see you guys participate and let us know where you're at. But now we want to hear your questions. So let us know what you guys want to ask Ashton. But I'm going to ask another one, because before we do this program, and we've said it in previous episodes, we try to do our research here at the Hall of Fame, and not in a creepy, like, stalker way, but we get on Google, we type your name in, and try to see where you've been, what you've done, or was there ever an article written about you? Were you on a podcast, whatever it may be, so we can come into here prepared. And in doing that, some of the things we found. So you had an internship at Nike. Can you kind of talk about what that experience was like and maybe how it's helped you get to where you're at today?
Yeah. So I interned at Nike. It was, my senior year of college. And so, that was a little bit ago, but it was, I had interned prior with University of Michigan Athletic Department, the Detroit Lions, the Detroit Red Wings, but moving across the country to Oregon, working at Nike, where you have, 7,000 people on a campus, you're interning with 150 people. It was a whole different experience for me, and one that, was really impactful and meaningful. And I think, a lot of things I learned out there I still carry with me today. I think, it was, for me personally, it was a great internship experience. Is one of my favorites. I loved working at the company. I worked in their product management division. So what I did was I was basically coming up with a new product line for their Nike ID line. So that was a really interesting project. It was a 3-month internship, and I think the biggest takeaway that I had was, you're in college, you're in these maybe smaller organizations working, but how do you get the answers that you need in a company that has 7,000 people in one area? So I had to network really well. I had to talk to a lot of different people, made a lot of friends. I have a ton of friends that are still out there right now working and staying in touch with them. But I think that really set me up for my networking skills. I think it set me up for kind of how am I going to be able to operate in a business when I need an answer? How am I going to be able to get it? And then trying to complete my projects. So a lot of really, great skills that came out of it. And it really set me up for kind of my first job, which was working with the NFL. I went from one coast out west, working with the biggest sponsor at Nike, to working with the NFL, which is, their largest partner as well. So on the East Coast. So it was a crazy year. But I think it really led into that next job of getting that experience at a big time organization to kind of make that leap to the NFL.
Yes. And doing that research, you mentioned you worked at the NFL there on the East Coast. Based on my understanding, it was a rotational program.
Yep.
And we've actually got a question here from Chris. And, maybe you touch on your experience and how you kind of broke into the NFL. But, their question is like, what kind of advice would you give someone that's just trying to get involved with an NFL organization? That's Chris on Facebook. So thanks for that question. But so what kind of advice would you give, Ashton, to somebody? And then maybe talk about that experience you had in that rotational program.
Yeah, I think, Chris, to answer that question, I think the biggest thing would be that, to keep on trying to ask different people, to reach out and connect with people. I probably get 2 or 3 cold emails, whether it's on LinkedIn or through my inbox, each week. And I try to take as many as you can, but you just never know where a connection is going to happen. So between reaching out and being proactive, and then also building your resume up. I mentioned prior to getting my internship at Nike, I had internships with Michigan, the Detroit Lions, Detroit Red Wings twice. I had several different experiences leading up to kind of that big internship at Nike. So you might not initially start at an NFL team, but there's other organizations and other sports teams, or even just businesses that you can gain valuable experience that can be transferable into that NFL team. So as you're reaching out to people and as you're contacting them, and whether it's LinkedIn or whatever means or methods that you're using, I would also try to build up your resume through various experiences, and don't shy away just because it's a smaller organization. Any kind of work is impactful that can lead up to, whenever you do get that big break, you have that experience ready to go.
Yeah, that's so good. And you've mentioned it a couple times, building up your resume. You mentioned networking and those cold emails that sometimes you get just out of the blue from individuals either in the industry or students that are looking to get into the industry. So if you could go into more detail, and we got the question actually from Spencer, who's a student at Purdue University in Fort Wayne. And he said, how did you network to ultimately end up, securing your job with the Lions? So what kind of networking advice do you have to give us? And maybe you can touch on some personal experience doing that.
Yeah, I think my biggest networking advice to anyone that calls me or that I talk to that's, in high school and college, that's kind of looking for that advice, is just to be genuine, and to make sure that your interest is consistent. I can't tell you how many people have reached out over the last 8 years that I hear from one time and I never hear from again. And that doesn't mean that you have to consistently blow up someone's email or constantly text them. You don't want to overdo it. But, there's so many of us professionals, and, our time is so limited that when we talk to someone, I love when people follow up in, whether it's 6 months or a year, to show that they're continually interested. It's not just a fleeting moment that they saw my name and they wanted to reach out. So I'd say that just to make sure that you're staying on top of networking and that it's genuine when you come across, there's actually 2 people on my team that I hired that they reached out to me through cold emails, and I rejected them on initial hires, but they stayed in touch, they followed up, they stayed connected, they really wanted to get into sports, and I eventually ended up hiring them onto my team, and they're on my team right now. So I would just say that that persistence, that pays off. So that's just the one thing that I would always say is you can tell at the other end of networking. I can always tell when someone's being genuine or they're just trying to get a job, and I'm just the next person that they're contacting. So my biggest advice is just be yourself, show your interests, show that you care, but make sure that you're being very genuine when you're reaching out to people, because it really makes a difference when you're on the other side of the fence. And that's really how I landed a lot of my jobs. I didn't have any connections. My parents are not in sports or any family members that I know. So I just kind of have throughout my career just continued to build great relationships with people. And, ultimately I'm back here at the Lions, and this ironically was my first internship. So my first boss was vouching for me when I was coming back to the Lions after the NFL. So, it's just building those relationships and making sure that when you have them, that you're keeping them for the long haul.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then I got to come back with a quick one. When did you start networking? Like how early in your college career, high school, whatever it was, when did you start?
So yeah, there's a running joke at our company that I don't even use my business cards. But I'm not the best networker, I'll tell you that. But what I do is, like I said, is I'm all about just building great relationships, whether I'm working with someone. So I'd say about college, I started really pouring into kind of whatever organization I was in or whatever company I was working for, to really get to know people in the company, get to really make sure that I know what their job is, what more about them. And to me, that naturally works out. I'm not actively reaching out to people too much just to get to know them. But whenever I have an opportunity to meet someone, I take it very personal, and I want to get to know them and really build that relationship. So For me, it's taken a little bit longer. I started in college, but it's quickly through all the jobs that you have. It's amazing how many people end up at the same company later on, or in a different role that someone calls them for a recommendation. So every single person you're meeting is becoming critical. The older and older I get, a lot of my friends are, like I said, still at Nike that I've built those great relationships with. I work with a lot of my colleagues at the NFL. My bosses here from the first time of the Lions are still here. So the sports world is very small. So I would just say, as you start to build that resume up, just make sure that you're making really genuine, powerful relationships, and it will continue to serve you well.
Yeah, and I would echo kind of what you're saying to the students that are watching. We've had so many other guests on previous episodes, and you guys can find those on our YouTube page if you're interested in seeing some of the other people we've talked to. And they always talk about how you said, make it personal. Don't make it just some generic thing that you've sent out to 100 people. Like, see what the Lions just did. I've got people commenting about, the head coaching hire, and you may have nothing to do with that, right? But just if someone reaches out and you can tell they're at least paying a little bit attention to what's going on in your world. A new head coach is a big deal for an NFL organization. That means a little bit more than just saying, hey, do you have any internships, that you can offer? So that's what I would encourage your students. We got a question here from someone who works at a high school, and they said, what advice would you have for a high schooler who thinks they might be interested in analytics? So maybe a specific major, you might, pub the alma mater. What kind of advice you got for a high schooler that's interested in analytics, both in the sports side or the business side?
Yeah, I think my biggest advice would be it's never too early to start building your technical skills. I think there's a lot of free resources online, whether it's going into a major. If you are dead set on kind of analytics, I think looking at computer science majors is probably, one of the biggest areas that, we pull from when we're looking for candidates in the analytics space. But I'd also say that, build up your skill sets through various online platforms, your technical skills, whether it's Python, SQL, R. There's a lot of different tools that you can start building kind of that skill set to be into a computer science major or into a business major or engineering or whatever it may be. And I'd also say, though, I'd caution anyone in high school or in college. I didn't really set my goals, and it's different for everyone, but I didn't really get a firm grip of what I wanted to do until really I was kind of a senior and actually graduating college and into the NFL program.
Wow.
So if you're in high school, I would say that a lot of my internships and my experiences in college kind of shaped what I eventually wanted to do. So I would just keep an open mind of, you might be dead set and that might be great and that might be your route. For me, it was a little different where, I didn't really know in high school. I didn't even know in early college of what I wanted to do. So it took a lot of experiences to know what I didn't want to do that really helped me kind of carve my path and figure out where I wanted to be. So I would just keep an open mind as well as you go through all these different trainings and experiences that, talk to a lot of different people in different parts of the sports industry, because you never know what's going to pique your interest and change your mind.
Yeah, I think that's so true. When you say talk to a lot of people or you learned what you didn't want to do, the more experience that you can get at the high school level, at the college level, the better off you're going to be, because you're either going to find something you love or you're going to find something that you say, yeah, that can't be my job. I can't do that every day, and it's an internship. So, it might be unpaid. It might be a low, minimum wage thing, but like you're learning. And that's that season where it's so important to keep doing that. Speaking of learning though, COVID kind of changed a lot of things, but how do you ensure that you are, the best, director of business strategy and business analytics, for the Lions? How are you developing yourself even now in your career so that you're constantly still learning?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is, and it might be a little different than the audience listening. Early in my career, I was doing, like I said, a lot of online classes, a lot of different, whether it was YouTube or, going through Coursera or, other different websites to kind of build my technical skills and kind of build my, overall skills as a business person. Now more so later in my career, I'm constantly reaching out to colleagues, whether it's around the NFL, people that are my counterparts at other teams, or whether it's the NBA, MLB. There's a lot of great ideas in the sports industry. So now that I'm in the sports industry, it's really easy to call the Cowboys or the Vikings, Jaguars, Browns, call them up and see kind of what they're working on, what their thoughts are. We have league calls with all 32 teams, and I have a lot of contacts in other sports leagues. So I would say early on, it was a little bit more self-motivated, in terms of being independent and having to go out and find those resources. And then now, once you're in your career, I would say make sure that you're utilizing, the people at other teams and, other sports leagues, because, I certainly don't have all the answers, but a lot of my, friends and colleagues that I've met at other teams are some of the smartest people I know. And it's really cool to learn from them and, take what the 49ers might be doing and try to implement that at the Detroit Lions. So it's really cool to learn from the other people around you.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of those other teams. I know here at the Hall of Fame, we do our best to have great relationships for the same reason, professionally, so we can reach out, ask for advice. Each year, we're, enshrining a new class of Hall of Famers, so that changes the teams and the franchises that we're working with, to get some of their staff here, or maybe, some of their, retired players that want to come back and support a teammate. So, speaking of enshrining, new players, actually, the director of youth and education, Jerry Shockey, is in arguably the coolest room in really all of sports, but definitely here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And he's got a little quick tidbit for you guys that are watching. And then I know he's got a question for you, Ashton, when he's done there. So, Jerry, take it away.
Can you hear me, Nathan?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go for it.
Okay. Well, perfect. So I want to welcome everyone, all the high school, college students. I saw all the schools being listed on the Facebook live stream. I mean, schools from all over the country that are tuning in here today to learn a little bit more about careers in this particular career with Mr. Mullinix. And so I want to welcome everyone to our Pro Football Hall of Fame gallery, where we house the bronze bust of the greatest players who have ever played. Today, I'm in front of a bronze bust of Detroit Lions legend, not John Elway, but Barry Sanders. And now this might seem like an odd location for this conversation that we're having here today, but it takes a lot of hard work to receive this kind of honor, a Hall of Fame bust. So think about this just for a second, to put things in perspective, what it means to get enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Since the game has been played, Little League, high school, college, NFL, there have been over 300 million players at all levels. There have been 5 million that have played in college, and there have been nearly 30,000 that have been paid to play, coach, and administrate the game of football. But there are only 346 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And while our guest, Mr. Mullinix, may not have one of these to celebrate his career, he was featured in the Sport Business Daily as one of the new voices under 30 a year ago, which is just an amazing honor. Someone who pays attention to those kind of things in the sports industry, it's an amazing honor. I'm curious, Mr. Mullinix, what did the honor mean to you when you found out?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jerry. It was a year ago, actually, last month. So it's been good to reflect on it. I mean, it was certainly it was the first time they'd done a 30 under 30 for Sports Business Daily. So it meant a lot to me. A lot of hard work went into it. But I think, the biggest thing for me was, and not to sound too cliche, but I kind of built our team up over the last 5 or 6 years. And it really was kind of a testament. I mean, I got a lot of the credit and the namesake for, kind of being the lead of our analytics team here, but, starting that team up and building it, and then seeing what a difference we're making, not only at the Lions, but being recognized amongst all of our sports leagues. It just meant a lot to me to kind of build that team up and then kind of take recognition for it. So it was an independent award, but I really, I couldn't have done it without my team. And I think that was one of the biggest things to be able to share with those guys, that, it's, yes, I'm going to New York, I'm gonna have a ceremony and get an award for it, but it was certainly, a team award for all of us. So we were all happy that, we're finally getting that recognition of kind of building up this great internal department that we've had. And, it's never been done at the Detroit Lions, and we're a part of that. So it was really cool to share that kind of award with the team, and, tell those guys kind of what had happened, and that, we're getting some recognition around the nation. So certainly a good time though. And it was fun to meet the other people that had won the award as well, and made some hopefully lifelong friends. And once again, just kind of extending that network to, a lot of great people on that list. So I'm happy to share it with them.
And Nathan, sounds almost like an induction speech where you don't take all the credit yourself. You pass it along to your teammates, because without them, as these guys say, their bus wouldn't be here. So Nathan, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. That's so true. You mentioned it being like an induction speech, and I was sitting there kind of chuckling to myself because Ashton might be in line one day, a contributor to the game. Get him in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We can start the campaign now, and he can have a bronze bust in there, just like Barry Sanders. But I wanted to move on because we got a question earlier, and I actually had it written down because I wanted to ask you. That's a great honor. 30 under 30. I'm sitting here as a 25-year-old. I'm like, oh, that'd be kind of cool list to get on. But I love the humility that you had about that, and how it's the team. It's all about the team, but you have continued to develop yourself, to make sure that you are doing the best that you can in your career. And we had a question, and it said, this is from Randy, and Randy says, how has your MBA helped with your current position? He said, I'm currently an MBA student at American, looking to get into sports. So I noticed that you recently went back and got the MBA. So how's that kind of benefited you?
Yeah, it's so I went to U of M for undergrad as well, and I majored in sports management and business, and then just recently decided to go back and complete my MBA and just finished kind of last May. I think the biggest benefit for me was I was doing it kind of on the weekends, so I was working, kind of leading these different teams, and then going to school on the weekends to try to complete it. I think the network that I gained from kind of it's just a whole nother series of people that I got to meet through that program that are certainly smart people that are driven, motivated, that I can able to call and lean on now. So I think for me, the biggest thing I took away, I certainly learned a lot through the classes and being able to apply a lot of that to my job. But kind of when you get to that second graduate level, it's really about the network and the people that you're sitting next to in class. And I made 150 new friends that, are going to probably disperse all across the United States and, even internationally as well, that it's just completely outside of my sports network. So for me, it was really just gaining more business connections and, getting some more friends that I can lean on later in life, that I think that is really valuable to me. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I had from my MBA was just kind of, once again, another way to kind of grow that network, talk to people, learn from them. Certainly the people were the biggest takeaway that I had joining an MBA program.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm someone sitting here, I'm like, I've actually been considering it, should I go back? Should I not? So that's great to hear, the impact it had on you as I make that, those considerations. And we've got people that are already doing that. We got a question here though, from Peyton, and Peyton also goes to Purdue there in Fort Wayne. And Peyton is a Lions season ticket holder, or
Okay.
their family is. And they said, you mentioned the personalizing the fan experience. So as a season ticket holder, is there anything cool they can expect? There weren't really fans in 2020. When fans get to come back, hopefully in 2021, full force, what can season ticket holders expect?
Yes, so that's a great question from Peyton. I think one of the biggest things that we try to do is, whether it's we try to gather as much data as possible. So we cast our net as wide as possible, gathering different data points. We have, over 5 million records in our data warehouse over the last few years that we've gathered. And what it allows us to do is try to personalize that fan experience. And what, as a season ticket member, the biggest thing you'll probably notice is kind of our Lions rewards program, or kind of a little bit of our loyalty program. You see Lions Loot. So we're able to kind of customize, when you come into different entrances, we're able to kind of, send you a message, or, give you incentives, or give you surprise and delight rewards based on kind of your spending habits. If you're going somewhere in the stadium and spending money, we're able to reward you based on kind of how much you're spending and what you're spending it on. As we continue to gather data, we'll be able to kind of increase those surprise and delight rewards. So we're hoping over the next year or two that we'll continue to customize that and make it more personalized, so that you really feel you know, when you're coming to the Detroit Lions and you're spending money, that, you know, we're giving you rewards back. And, you know, it's kind of a two-way relationship, and not just you coming to our stadium and spending money, but we're certainly rewarding you as well for doing things that, you know, kind of help us gain a home field advantage when you come to our stadium.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exciting. If you're a Lions season ticket holder like Peyton, you got something to look forward to. So real exciting there. I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but I want to go back because I think it is a good question, and maybe you could dive in a little deeper. This is from Davey, and he says, you mentioned that your first internship was with the Lions, and you've gone all over the place, and now you're back with the Lions. But when you were applying for that first internship, and, you know, you're in college, you're unsure maybe whether or not you're going to even be considered, how, as a college student, can you make yourself stand out, one, on your resume so that you get an interview, and then boom, now I'm granted this interview, this opportunity? How do I separate myself from the pack when I interview?
Yeah, and so it's an interview. It's all about you know, building, like I said, building that resume, making sure that you put all of your experience on there. You know, at that time of applying, you know, I'd worked a couple high school jobs. I had taken on a free, or working unpaid at the athletic office at Michigan, and, you know, my resume was not that great. The Lions took me on to give me an interview, and I think, you know, talking with my boss, and I asked him kind of, you know, what separated me after he gave me the job, and, you know, I was the only one out of, you know, I think they interviewed over 10 people that came with a playbook. And actually, that's actually the name of it, a playbook, to the internship, of exactly how I was going to do the job that was laid out for that summer. Kind of hardbound cover, you know, and you know, I still have copies of it, and I look back at it from time to time. And he actually has one in his office at work. But it detailed exactly what I was going to do in the summer, what would I do for him, and here's what the results would be. And none of it really added up and probably made any sense once we kind of looked back at the end of the season. But it was the part of coming in and trying to have a plan and being detailed, and, you know, bringing in some physical copy that was something that really set you apart. And that's something that stood out to him as, you know, before I even, from his perspective, before I even told him what the job entailed, he was trying to come with different ideas and different ways that he could help make my organization better. So that's why he took the chance on me. And like I said, it's getting that first internship. It kind of, the snowball runs downhill and builds up and builds. So I think you got to find small ways like that of, you know, what can you do to be more prepared than other people? What's going to stand out to someone? You know, don't go too over the top, but I think that there's always small ways that you can think of that are going to make you stand out from someone coming in the door right behind you.
That story, to me, I was ready to hire you. You talk about, you know, like, I've been lucky enough with some internships here. You know, I sit in on some interviews, and I just think if a college student came in with something like that, that's going to set you apart. I'm sure you sit in on interviews now when you're, you know, hiring your team or hiring some interns, like that definitely is going to make somebody, you know, stand out. So I think that's great advice for our viewers, our students, as they're looking to get those internships and gain that experience. This next question is from Finn. Make sure I said that. Yeah, Finn, who's attending Villanova. And they said, you know, which technical skills or programs would you say are most important for you with the Lions?
Yeah, it's a great question. I get that one a lot. I think, you know, I rattled off a few of them earlier. I think it really depends on kind of the role. And, you know, I have certain roles on my team that, you know, they don't have any technical skills, and they're more, you know, soft skills and people skills. You know, like I said, I oversee membership services and premium services. From an analytics perspective, our team's divided into two sides. We have an advanced analytics team, which is very technical. So they're mostly working in Python, SQL, R. On the data visualization side, they're working in Power BI and Click. And then we have our research and kind of CRM team, which, you know, they're working through Microsoft Dynamics, CRM, SQL again. So it really just depends on what side of the coin that you want to work on. For us, there's two sides. Some departments have four, some have only one. You're not going to go wrong learning any skill, though. I think that you don't know what job you're going to end up in. So If I was to give you one program to kind of start off with, I think SQL is a very easy one to start learning, and kind of other programming languages can build off of that. Our programmers like to use Python the most, but like I said, there's a lot of different ways that you can go. I don't think across all the NFL teams, there's necessarily one right or wrong language. It really just depends on the environment and the other developers that you have around you.
I'll be completely honest. A lot of that went over my head, but I knew that Ben would know what you're talking about. So I want to make sure we got that question in there.
Yeah,
I would be on the, the soft skills side of things, probably, the people skills, that type of stuff. But I want to ask you, you've talked a little bit about some of that within your industry and business and analytics. Where do you see the future of the industry going? How do you think it's going to change in the next 5-10 years?
I think it's going to continue to be data driven, personally, and I'm a little biased on that. But even since I started back in 2014 with the Lions, there was no analytics team, and probably maybe 6 teams in the NFL had an analytics team, or 1 or 2 people. Now I think we're up to 25 or 23 teams have analytics teams. So in the last 5 to 6 years, it's grown substantially since I started. And those roles are kind of filling out. You saw some of the other leagues like the NBA and MLB are a lot more progressive, and NFL kind of lags behind. I think that we're just scratching the surface, though, in terms of how we can use data to make business decisions better on the business side, even on the football side as well. But you alluded to earlier kind of, how data can help the business side of things. And I think that a lot of organizations, especially in the NFL, have kind of just relied on, loyalty of fans coming back year in and year out, and haven't had to really invest in kind of a lot of the resources that myself and some of the team brings. So for me, I think the next 5 to 10 years is just going to be that's going to really be kind of growth for us, is, continuing to be smarter, make better decisions. And, historically it's been a lot of the teams at the bottom, like the Browns and the Jaguars and us, that have invested in analytics to kind of get a little bit of an advantage to creep back up on whether it's business or football. I think you're going to start to see that, every company is going to invest more heavily in data and analytics, because they're just realizing that's the way of the future. And, it helps everyone make better decisions, and, we can do it quickly and more efficiently.
Yeah, no, I mean, as someone who's not really in that world, I would agree with you, though. Like, I think it's going to continue to grow, and you're going to see it, if you're in sports industry, sports business, analytics is going to continue to be a huge topic of conversation, and it's going to be implemented in a lot of organizations, like you said. I think one of the last questions I have for you, and we'll see if we get any other ones from Facebook that we can include, but do you have any long-term goals that you haven't been able to reach? I mean, you've accomplished a lot in your in your relatively short career. Is there stuff that you're like looking off to? You're like, I want to do this. I want to get to this title someday. Or, what are some of those long-term goals maybe?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I think it's always good to have goals, and certainly I appreciate the compliment there. But there's still more that I want to accomplish. And, I think for me, one of those goals is I'd like to lead a company someday, whether that's in sports or out of sports. It'd be great to be a president of a team and kind of leading that charge. Wherever I go, though, I think one of the advice that I give a lot of people that I talk to is, I think some people get carried away with title or compensation or even prestige if you're talking about an MBA or where you're going to go. And I think for me, I'd continue to challenge people and myself to just go to places that you can make the biggest impact. Certainly for the Lions, I think there was a lot of people wondering why are you going from the NFL? Why are you going to the Lions? And there's a lot of areas of growth here and a lot of opportunity here to improve that might not have existed at whether it was the NFL or whether it was at Nike. So, I think that's the biggest advice that I have kind of from that angle, is just go where you can make the biggest impact. And, for me, hopefully that's going to eventually lead to kind of leading one of these teams one day and, really having an impact on the sports industry and, hopefully turning around a franchise, kind of the long-term goal for me.
Yeah, that's good. So I did get 2 Facebook questions I want to get in here now, because I think they're pretty good, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but just as we get here towards the end, this is from Dion, and Dion says, what was your quote unquote first win when you're working for the Lions and you're like, what I'm doing here is the right thing. I'm capable, I'm worthy of this job, and we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, there was a lot of projects I was working on. I was a one-man show for a while, and it took about 2 years. And I remember when they finally gave me headcount, and they were like, "Hey, we're going to give 2 people. We're going to slide them over underneath you. We're going to let you hire 2 other people." And I was like, "Wow, this is all right." They're starting to trust me. They're seeing the work that I'm doing. They're understanding it. I mean, there's a lot of work that you do that goes unnoticed, like it's kind of, just left in someone's inbox, or they don't give you a lot of feedback on it. But when you start to have direct reports underneath you, I think that was kind of the moment to me. It was like, okay, they start to believe in not only myself, but kind of my vision for where this can go. They have some trust in me here. And I think that meant a lot to me, because that was kind of a little bit of the bright spot of like, all right, I'm on to something here. We're doing the right thing. We're making a difference. And now how can I take these 4 other people and kind of grow it even further? So, and we've continued to do it. And like I said, I started with myself. Now, I think I have 15 people underneath me now. So it's grown quite a bit. And I think that's just, it starts with kind of that first win, was just when you recognize from like your bosses that, they're trusting you to lead a team, that means a lot.
Yeah, that's a great example, or exhibit of your first win. I think that's awesome. And this other question we got is from Chris, and Chris is a sophomore student in college, and they said, I'm looking for a summer internship, but you don't know exactly or specifically what area you want to go in. So maybe you're interested in a lot of different things, or you're just completely, I won't say clueless, because I was in the same spot in college where you're just like, I don't know exactly what I want to do. I'm in this major. I need an internship. What kind of advice would you give someone in that position?
My most transparent advice would be just pick one. I think you're a sophomore, so like it's really early on, and nothing that you do is permanent. I think getting that experience, I was a youth football intern. That was my first title at the Lions, and once you're in, though, you can talk and network with every single department and talk to them and build, like I said, build those relationships. The important part is just being able to get your foot in the door, to be able to talk, walk around, help people on side projects. It doesn't really matter. I don't want to say it doesn't matter what you do as a sophomore. It does matter, but nothing you do is permanent. It's an internship, and all you're going to do is be able to provide value in one lane of traffic, but you can explore the whole organization once you're in an organization. So you're not going to make a wrong choice. I think you just, need to settle on one, go for it. And then once you're in there, you just need to make the most of it by talking to as many people as you can, helping where you can. And that's, ultimately, like I said, I don't work in youth football anymore, but, that's where I started out. And, it taught me that that's a great part of our business, but, maybe I want to go in a different direction. So I think that was one of my biggest key takeaways from doing that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice right there for Chris. And then the last question, and we kind of ask everybody this question to kind of close the show or the episode. And it's, Ashton, what's that one piece of advice, high school, college, young professional, seasoned vet, like what's that one piece of advice that someone gave you or that you want to give our viewers for them to take away with them, if you had to boil it down to just like one thing?
Yeah, I think the one thing that's always stood with me is, you just, and I don't know if it's summed up in a nice quote or phrase or anything like that, but you got to do the job that you currently have. I think a lot of people always look ahead and they want to be a GM or they want to be a president and they want to be a vice president or whatever it may be, but you have to excel at the job you currently have. And that to me is, you're never going to move anywhere unless you're doing your job that you have really well. So I see it a lot from people that I have had underneath me as an intern or as an employee. Sometimes they're looking off into the distance and, they might be a little jealous that they're not in this meeting or they're not doing X, Y, and Z. And I would just say, focus on the job at hand, because, everyone starts off, in a different spot, and you just got to slowly build up. Like I said, build the resume, take time, have patience. I mean, if you look at it, you probably have, a 30 to 40 year career. You're not going to get there within, 5 years or 3 years. So I would just, whatever you're doing, get the most out of it, do it really well. And from there, more opportunities will arise. So that'd be kind of my key advice to anyone that's working underneath me, is just do this job well and more opportunities will come from it.
That's great advice. I'm sitting here, I'm 3 years into my career, and I'm like, I can learn from that, just to continue to do your job and do, that it's the New England Patriots way, do your job, and if everybody does their job, everyone can be successful. But I think that's great advice, because like you said, in really any industry, not just sports, we're looking at 30, 40 years, you're going to be working, and you're not just going to get there with the snap of a finger or overnight. So that's awesome advice, Ashton. And, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode and this installment of our Before the Snap series with Ashton Mullinix, the Executive Director of Business Strategy and Analytics with the Detroit Lions. So thank you so much, Ashton, for being a part of this program with us today. We greatly appreciated you connecting in and providing this advice and just talking about your career for the students. So thank you again for doing that. Students, please look in the Facebook comments. We've pinned the comment. If you want to connect with Ashton, or you want to connect with us here at the Hall of Fame, there's a link to his LinkedIn account. Feel free to send him a message, connect with him, so that maybe you could follow up with some questions. And he said it earlier, probably better if you make it a little bit more personal. At least tell him you saw him on Before the Snap, so it's not completely blind. But I'm sure he'd be welcome to, connecting with you guys and answering any other questions you might have. And we would be welcome to doing that here at the Hall of Fame. You can email us at education@profootballhof.com. That's listed as well. But like I said, Ashton, thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I hope you did. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Do you agree?
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the questions. I had a blast. So thank you guys for having me on. And like you said, feel free, anyone listening, the audience wants to connect. I'm happy to connect with you offline and on LinkedIn. So thank you once again.
Yeah, appreciate that. And then for just all of our viewers, just check out, other Hall of Fame content, like, subscribe, follow all those accounts. We've got a great podcast, the Mission Podcast, where recently we've been interviewing all the guys that were finalists for this year's Hall of Fame class. And with that note, we're really excited. We're about to be announcing the Hall of Fame class of 2021. I know Calvin Johnson, one of those Lions, was a finalist. So we'll see if he's a part of that class of 2021 here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And students, tune in next week, Friday, same time at noon. We're going to have, not next week. Next week's the Super Bowl. I'm just rattling off. Next week, we won't be here because of all the Super Bowl activities. We'll be here 2 weeks from now, February 12th, with Tyler Hamblin, who's a football operations coordinator with the Cleveland Browns. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you again, Ashton, and thank you to all of our viewers. And we'll see you guys next time here on Before the Snap.